It is preparing the live stream. We'll just give it like a minute or two, I think, before we officially get rolling, okay?
Okay.
Now, let me make sure I don't have audio. I can hear myself on delay. Okay, there we go. We are live, Carl.
Georgia, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you today?
Good. It's kind of weird starting like that, right? Because we did just have a 10-minute conversation before going through that whole thing. It's like having a guest on.
It's a little manufactured, right? But I feel like we have to be respectful of our audience, whoever is watching on YouTube or listening later on audio, and pretend like we didn't just shoot the shit for 10 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm doing well. Everything's as good as it can be, I guess.
Obviously, we are not in the studio today. We are in our respective households, and I'm praying that a cat doesn't just like fly across my screen at any moment, but it's probably going to happen at some point. So you want to share why we're at home?
Yeah. COVID hit the Hardwick household. So my wife tested positive yesterday morning, actually. So we're hunkered down here at home with the kids for the next couple of weeks until we get a negative test. So yeah, COVID hit close to home this time.
How are you gonna like survive that 2-week period? Obviously, you've got the home gym, so that's always nice. But you know, for a fitness person who's used to being out there and active, and with 2 kids at home, any like tips for someone who's in a similar position? Because there's probably a lot of people that are dealing with that at some point last year or this year.
Yeah, I'm super optimistic day one, right? But I don't think that it's going to be that much different, right? It's just little things like, not being able to go to the grocery store and, obviously not being able to come into the gym and stuff like that. But, we're set up here at home for that. And then just entertaining a 9 and a 4-year-old for a couple weeks and telling them they can't go out and play with their friends and stuff like that. But yeah, for us, I think it's going to be a lot of the same, right? Like just, buying things for the kids to entertain them over the next couple of weeks and, still going outside and, masking up and going on bike rides and stuff like that and staying away from other people. We're still going to do those things, but yeah, day one, super optimistic, but talk to me in 10 days and I'll let you know how it's going. But essentially it's the same thing that we went through back in, what was that? March, April, May.
Yeah.
It's essentially the same thing, right? Like where we weren't really going to grocery stores. We were Instacarting everything, Amazoning everything, and just spending time as a family. Luckily, neither one of us have, bad symptoms. We've both had a couple things. Like I've had a headache, and Janice has had, she's not been able to taste or smell anything for a couple of days. So outside of that, we're all good. So we don't fall into that camp of people that are really suffering from this thing. Like we don't have like really high fevers. We're not really sick. All of that. So thankful that we're not falling into that. So the hardest part of this, I think, is just going to be entertaining ourselves for the next couple of weeks and doing a lot of Zoom calls. And but what the hell's the difference? We do this shit all the time anyway. So.
Yeah, pretty set up for this. Well, Ian in the chat box says, oh no, and he hopes that she feels better ASAP.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I just talked to Iman yesterday, and she let me know that she was going through that, and I didn't even know that, but she was one of the ones that got really sick. So yeah, we're luckily we're okay. So we'll see how the next couple of weeks go.
Yeah, wishing you guys speedy recovery and be in the gym soon together again.
Yeah. One day, Georgia, one day.
One day we'll get back to normal. Well, I know one of the things we discussed talking about today, because this is the first podcast of 2021. It is January 6th today, and I think there's a lot of people that have spent some time over the last weeks or months reflecting on last year, what they accomplished, what they didn't accomplish, and then what they wanted to do moving into 2021. And gosh, we did a whole workshop series, which is on our YouTube channel. So anyone watching, if you want to review those and you haven't already, just go to our YouTube homepage. It's sitting there as a playlist. You can watch those recorded workshops. But this is a long way of saying there's a lot of people that are reviewing their habits right now and then thinking about their objectives for 2021. And I just wanted to touch base on like what you've done personally, Carl. I'll talk about what I've done and how we're setting ourselves up for a good year.
Yeah, I think I think going back and looking at what we did a couple of weeks ago with that webinar series, that was awesome. Even for me to kind of revisit, my process and what I'm doing and how I check in and how I sync with myself on a daily basis. But moving into this year, I'm not a huge like new year, I need to change everything in my life type person, but it is a great opportunity to sit back and reflect on what has gone well over the past couple months, what hasn't gone well over the past 12 months, and where can we change, refine, add, take away, just little things like that. So for me, it's a lot of the same, because I really hunkered down probably over the summer and really had to look at, what my big goals were and what I was doing and how I was going about my days. So I kind of just took, I was on a bit of a vacation over the past, 7-8 days. And I took a good amount of that time really reflecting on how the year went, both for us, at OPEX as well as me personally. And it was just like more refining for me, right? So it's like, how are my days set up? How productive am I? How productive do I have to be? What is a high level of productivity that I can actually sustain throughout the entire year and not ever get into those ruts of just feeling like shit, on a Friday afternoon and thinking like, is it Saturday yet? So just some refining things. And a lot of the stuff that, we talked about in that webinar, I just went back and, checked myself and made sure that I was doing those things and made sure that, I wasn't skipping my Saturday, Sunday daily syncs, making sure that I wasn't, getting too far away from, my big goals or purposes of being a really good father, husband, and being present and all of that stuff. So just realigning on those things and making sure I was etching time in my week where I intentionally put time aside for my wife outside of work and put time aside for my kids and stuff like that. So a lot of refining, but not many new things really. I want to go on a couple more vacations with the family this year. So I want to be really intentional on that. We have our objectives at OPEX that we just set that I'm always just so excited about. So, moving forward with those things and buttoning those things up. And, obviously our Coach RX launch at the end of this month, a lot of time and effort is going toward that. So, a lot of the same, just a lot of refinement and continuing on just being really consistent in everything.
Was there any like big glaring weaknesses or problems that you did identify from last year?
I realized that I spent more time than I wanted to playing catch up. And this year I don't want to do that at all, right? Like, and that doesn't mean I need to do more and I need to be more proactive or anything like that. I just have to organize what my objectives are a little more specifically so I'm not like missing things or my plate doesn't get so full where I'm like pushing stuff to, late at night to get done and knock out so I can feel good about that day. I think I guess it would be just being a little bit more proactive in my objectives and being a little bit more intentional on what I really, really need to get done on a day-to-day basis. And not playing that catch-up game. So that's probably my big objective this year is just being ahead of the curve always. We'll see how that goes.
Always ahead of the curve until your wife gets COVID and then you have to play catch-up from that. Man, yeah.
Hey, it's a good test. It's a good test to start the year.
It is indeed. That's a really positive way of thinking about that, Carl. Good for you. 2020 was a good year. Like I sat back and I looked at, what I accomplished on New Year's Eve. My husband and I sat across from each other and had a conversation of the things we were proud of that we'd each done personally. And then like for the other person. And it was really nice to reflect on some of the positives that came out of like an otherwise kind of chaotic year. A few big trips home didn't get planned, but alternatively, I now chat with my family on Zoom every week, which was something we weren't doing consistently. So definitely had to get creative as to how I wanted to hit my goals in terms of exercise, in terms of family and relationships, in terms of, professionally. But I think that we like really effectively made switches and pivots. So that was nice to reflect back on. But one thing I did do was I sat down and did like the like habit stock take. I think James Clear talks about it in his book. Like, sit down and literally write like everything you do on a typical day. And then, through all those actions from waking up, rolling out of bed, putting on your pajamas, cleaning your teeth, blah, 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 which ones are positive habits, which ones are negative habits, and then which ones are just kind of neutral. And my more negative habits are definitely around my like transitions in my day. So going from work to lunch, or going from work to relaxation, or going from like the couch to bed, I tend to like let everything blur into like the one big action instead of keeping things separate and having like different intentions throughout my day. And then you end up thinking about work over lunch and checking Slack and having trouble unwinding at the end of the day. So for 2021, I am being way more intentional about how I like create space for myself throughout the day. So, lunchtime rolls around, I'm going to sit on the floor and do 10 minutes of 10 belly breaths, like right after I close my laptop before I come down and eat lunch, so that I'm not, doing it in a fluster and still thinking about the emails I need to write. And same thing at the end of the day, taking 10 minutes to go outside and go on a walk before I come inside and, try and have a conversation with my husband. So those are really like my big focus points for 2021, just trying to create space between the different areas of my life a little bit better.
What did you do this past year when you and Jacob reflected on New Year's? What did you do or accomplish, or anything that kind of falls in line with that you were really pleased with, where you're like, oh man, I'm really happy that I got that done this year?
Yeah, I on a like professional level, I am super proud of us for getting this podcast up and running, and doing this consistently. This has been really fun, and 2020 was a good year for OPEX, right? We welcomed so many new coaches to our family and really got to speak to a bunch of people and help people through some challenging times. So professionally, it was a really, really positive year. On a more personal level, 2020 was a year of like resting and relaxing a little bit more for me, which was made easier, I think, by the fact that we were at home and didn't have some of those like regular stresses of commuting to work and rushing so much. And so I took a little bit more time out for myself, had some really like positive results in terms of overall health, like missing menstrual cycles came back, which was a huge win for me. And I think that came down to like just having more time to rest and relax and not going all the time.
Yeah, and you took control of your own fitness as well this year, right?
That is true.
How is that going? You're coaching yourself.
Yeah, it's going well. I don't know what else to say other than it's been awesome. I get to just have a little bit more control over the day to day, because I do jujitsu and there's so much unknown inside of that. So you do a tough session on Tuesday, you have no idea how your body is going to feel the next day. And being able to be the one that says, I take an extra rest day, or I'm going to actually change my priorities for this day a little bit based on how I'm feeling, has been really nice.
Would you recommend it for coaches?
I think it really depends where you're at in your coaching life cycle, right? Like 2 years ago, I needed someone else to take control of my fitness. I had been programming for myself for a while, and I let some bad habits kind of bubble up from that, notably doing too much and not holding myself back. And so I think it really depends like where you are in your journey, and if you can trust yourself to give yourself what you need, or if you're going to fall prey into some bad habits. And maybe it's something where I do 2 years of coaching myself and then I decide I want to coach again.
Yeah, I think there's some really cool things that come from being coached by someone else. There's a lot of cool things that you learn while you go through that process. And a lot of the time, and I'm not saying this is going to be your case, but a lot of the time you don't realize those things that you learned until you take control of your own thing. and you're like, oh man, like I didn't even realize this, but this coach had me doing this thing and I stopped doing that thing. And now this isn't as good, or I don't feel as aligned, or whatever the thing is. But yeah, I think there's some really cool things that come from coaches being coached by other coaches and kind of getting a look into their brains a little bit and how they do things. And I know you worked with your coach for a little while, and I'm sure you took some really good things from being coached by Sean.
Absolutely. Do you think you'll ever go back to having a coach, like hiring a fitness coach?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
Why do you say that?
Gosh, it's just, I've been doing it for so long, right? I think back and, and I went through a lot of iterations of, having a coach, not having a coach, having a coach, not having a coach. Like when I started this whole thing, in my early teen years, like I didn't have a coach. I just did this thing myself and made a lot of mistakes and figured it out. And then, wasn't a one-to-one coach, but having a strength conditioning coach and assistant strength conditioning coaches and all of that over those years. It was great to get that insight into, a different way of doing things, and having someone else from the outside looking and almost like judging, assessing how you're progressing, blah, blah, blah. And then going into one-to-one and having a one-to-one coach for a while. And then taking that back. And that story was over like, 20 years, right? That's 20 years. I think I'm just so far into it where it's like, I don't even want to say I know myself so well, because I think we all know ourselves really well. Right. But based on, what my intentions are in fitness right now, if they stay the same, I'll never get a fitness coach again, because I just feel unbelievably aligned with what I do in the gym on a day-to-day basis. And I just have so much fun doing it. If I'm like, we roll into later this year and I'm like, I want to compete in fitness, or I want to compete in this sport, or I want to get better at this other thing, I would consider getting a coach, because, when you're actually pushing progression and trying to get better, like really trying to get better, it's just so freaking hard. I don't care who you are. It is so hard to give yourself what you really need, because you're almost in that auto regulation like mindset so much, where you're like, oh, well, I feel this way this day, so I'm going to kind of back off, or, I'm going to go too hard. And, when we're trying to get better at something, we have to like skirt that line a little bit, and we have to like push ourselves, right? Because we need to force adaptation. And just my mindset, I wouldn't do that, right? Like I would auto regulate and take a step back and be like, not today. I want to feel good. I want to sleep well, all that stuff. So if I ever got into that, like trying to get good at something, I would probably consider getting a coach, but not if intentions stay the same. Shit's just too good right now. I feel awesome in the gym right now.
That's awesome to hear, Carl. What does awesome in the gym mean for you? Like, what is awesome about fitness right now?
I still wake up every day and I have like a flutter in my chest when I know that I'm training on that day. Like I'm excited to do it. Right. So I'll kind of roll over before the alarm goes off and it says like 4:45 on the clock. And I know I have like, this awesome session in the gym that day. Like I get up because I'm excited to go into the gym or go down to the garage and just kind of just move. Right. Or, feel some really tough contractions or do some really good aerobic work. So that stuff is just really exciting to me still. So, I look at that and I'm like, yeah, things are just awesome in the gym because I'm so excited to get in there every single day.
Yeah, hearing you say that, I'm reflecting on this last like couple months of being my own coach again and, being the boss of my own fitness. And that excitement has definitely come back, which is nice.
Yeah, it has something to do with like alignment. Not to say that you weren't aligned before, but you'll see it with clients that we coach, right? It's like we coach some clients that also get that feeling, right? And it's probably because they feel really aligned with what they're doing. Clients that don't get that feeling, there's probably some misalignment, and we've all had it. Like I'm sure I have a couple of clients right now that are just like, I just need to change some things up or figure out what my real goals are and blah, blah, blah. But it's just alignment, right? Like, remember what we said on like feeling really good with the intentions and why we're going into the gym on a daily basis. If we're aligned every day, we wake up with those intentions and we know what we're going down to do, or going to the gym to do. And those are moving us closer to those intentions, or just continuing the feeling, right? That's exciting. But when you feel like, maybe I should be doing this instead of that, like that excitement's not going to be there.
So I think that's an awesome segue into the next topic of conversation that we wanted to hit on today. And when we talked about discussing this, like your face lit up, my face lit up. We were so excited for this conversation, and that is long-term program design, because it's January, and I know you have just kind of laid out long-term plans for your clients for the new year, and that's certainly something I went through over the end of December as well. So yeah, Carl, want to explain like what is long-term program design and why do you do it?
Yeah. So, just for anyone that's listening, you'd hear a term like macro cycle, right? Like that's long-term planning. And it's just really good, no matter who you're coaching, right? Like you can be coaching someone in, the general population realm, someone that's just trying to find connection with fitness. You can be working with a highly competitive athlete. You could be working with anyone. And I would always recommend that you have some idea of what their long-term plan looks like. Because if we don't have that idea of what the long-term plan looks like, when we go from day to day, week to week, cycle to cycle, we're almost just like spinning our wheels and coming up with things off the top of our heads, right? So um, I like the idea of going through that process with every single client, no matter what their goals are, because it's just fun to talk to them about that and kind of say, hey, we're in a new year. I'm going to start a new macro cycle, because that's how I usually do it. I don't work with any Olympians, so I'm not like building out 4-year macro cycles or anything like that. So I usually, just for my brain, I just start at the beginning of each year and I just lay out that year for them. And for the people that I coach that, compete in fitness, for instance, it's like, hey, this is the long-term plan. This is what your season looks like. We're peaking here. We're taking it easy here. I know that you do a family vacation here, and then we're coming back, and then this is what it looks like. Or general population people, it's just like, hey, we're just doing a lot of volume over time. And, based on, what you told me that your goals were, we don't have an end date to those goals, right? So we're just building this macro cycle or this long-term plan as a mechanism of checking in, right? Because you will definitely intentionally check in when you hit the end of that macro cycle in December 2021, and you'll have to reflect as a coach. You'll have to reflect, am I giving this person the right things? Are we moving closer to their goals or not? And that's always a really good time for me. And, December, January, to look at, the people that I'm coaching, and am I giving them the right things? Are they fulfilled? Are they happy? Do they have that excitement? Are their goals still the same? Do we have to have another conversation? So on and so forth. So I think it's just a really good opportunity to kind of hit reset a little bit and critically look at what we're giving people. Because if we don't do that, we can just kind of like do this forever, right? Where it's just like accumulation 1, accumulation 36, you know what I mean? Where we're just like giving people work over and over and over, which is fine. But most people lose connection and excitement over time if they're not connected to what they're doing and why they're doing it.
So does that mean like come December, you are setting those clients up with some kind of like testing or FMEs to check in, or is it more just like a evaluation? Like
no, not really. Yeah, not really. There was a time where I did things like that, but not every client wants to like go through a testing cycle because it's January. It's more just a back room, like self-reflection on like what I'm giving my clients, and me to like look at what I'm giving them with a critical lens and say, okay, this was the macro cycle. This is what you said the goals of that macro cycle were. There was a pivot in April because it was COVID, right? Like now goals shifted and you gave them this, and then they're back in the gym. And like, what does that thing look like? So it's more of like a self-assessment essentially as a coach and what we're giving clients. But there's probably a few that I, give some FMEs or give some assessments at the beginning of the year, but not really. Usually it's just a continuation, especially depending on who you're working with, right? It's just like, I don't need to test if, Emma can do an air squat. It's like, yeah, she can do an air squat now. Cool. Right. It's just more of like a, hit reset, look at it critically, rebuild a phase. That's it.
Got it. Are you having that like detailed conversation with all of your clients on what their training year is going to look like, or not everyone?
Not everyone. Yeah, I think, I think some people need to hear it and others don't. Or some people want to hear it and other people don't, right? Like there's some people that, and we talk about it all the time, right? It's like everything has to be individualized down to the way that we speak to our clients, right? So, I've had conversations with some clients where I try to like, open the book on them and I'm like, hey, this is what we're doing. And they just like get this overwhelmed look and feel. And they're just like, I don't care. Like, I don't need to know those things. So short answer is no. But I definitely will brush over it and like our next consultation. So I'm not like, behind my computer, like super excited January 1st to like send out everyone's, yearly plan. But, if I have a consult with someone on January 15th, it's like, yeah, we're going to talk about what that yearly plan is, whether super general, depending on who it is, or very specific. So like the coaches that I coach, it goes very specific, right? Because I want them to, be not only engaged in the process, but I want them to kind of look at their program through my eyes instead of looking at their program through just their eyes. And maybe they'll learn something from that, or maybe they'll be like, hey, this dude's an idiot. I don't know. But yeah, I get a little more specific with those guys.
I really hope they don't feel like, hey, this dude's an idiot, because something would be wrong if that were the case.
You never know, man. You never know.
You really never know what people are thinking. Okay, I'm going to keep like asking you questions because I'm going to try and get all the secret sauce that I can from you today, Carl, when it comes to long-term program design, selfishly. So you sit down, end of December, January, you're writing these long-term plans. Are you just like planning out phases of training? So accumulation, intensification, deload, pre-comp, comp, depending on whether they're an athlete or not? Or are you actually like getting into training splits for later in the year?
Yeah. So again, it never gets into training splits ever. Like, I think that's crazy. We'll like, if we try to program a training split for July for someone, like we will 99% have to pivot away from that. So I just think that's a waste of time. I think it's more of just like a general overview of knowing what that person's year is going to look like. And if it's an athlete, it's like, yeah, now it gets a little more specific. That's when we start getting into like, we put dates on the calendar, and it's like we have this thing in March, right? And then we have this thing in July, and then we have this thing in August. And then the training program literally goes around those things because they're competitors, they're athletes, like everything has to go around those events. So it does get very specific for those people. But it doesn't get as specific where it's like on Monday we're doing this, on Tuesday we're doing that. It's generally like, this is the split, this is how long it is. I usually ask those people, do you have anything scheduled, vacations, blah, blah, blah. We put that stuff in there as deload phases. And then, it just feels really good to look at a screen and to see someone's entire year. And when you're in like accumulation 1 or intensification 1 in January, you can wrap your brain around progression a little bit more, in my opinion, when you start to see that, you have pre-comp at the end of February going into March, right? So your brain's like, okay, I need to be, in this intensification phase. I have to prepare them for a pre-competition phase. So your brain's more wrapped around like, if it's a competitive fitness athlete, you're thinking like density, you're thinking intensity, you're thinking all those things, and they have to be at their maximum as they get to that pre-comp phase. But on the general population side, it's more of like a, when are we taking breaks in the year? What do phases of training look like? Maybe drop in like 1 or 2 intensity phases intentionally in their year as something really cool to prepare for, where it's like, hey, we've done these assessments in the past. I want to reassess you in July, and we're going to do these things. Some people get really excited about that stuff. Others really don't give a shit. But for the people that get excited about it, I like to lay that stuff in where it's like intensification here. We're going to get ready. We're going to do this thing. But for most general population people, it's just like the calendar is not that sexy, right? It's a bunch of accumulation. But the reason why I like to long-term plan for those people is because there's a goal that we're working toward throughout that year, or we're trying to keep up throughout that year. And a lot of the time it's consistency and high compliance in the gym, right? So it's just really setting them up to continue to do those things or to get to those things.
Yeah, it's funny because your athlete versus like your Gen Pop client, the athlete is technically more challenging to program for, right? But I find long-term planning for general population, both like it's way more simple, but at the same time, it is harder because you don't have like the specific thing that you're working towards, because ultimately the end goal is, like you said, consistency and being able to train for a lifetime. So my coaching brain, which is so used to thinking about like, we want to hit this back squat in this day, or we're looking for this like KPI to compete in this competition. Like it's just, you don't have that to work off, right? And then you also have the added challenge of this person isn't training, training is not their life. Their life is their job, their family, all of these other things outside of the gym. And ultimately those are going to get in the way. They're going to go on a vacation they didn't tell you about, or they're going to get sick, or something's going to happen, and they're going to miss like weeks of training, and it's going to mess up this like beautiful layout that you had January 1st. What do you do? Like, do you change it? Do you just, roll with the punches and move on right through to the next phase, Carl, as dates change?
Yeah. You change it or you never put it in, right? So remember what I said with general population people, like the calendar doesn't look sexy, right? So it's probably not that beneficial unless someone has a really busy schedule and they have a bunch of things they're traveling, they have a bunch of things that you have to plan around. For someone that's at home 365 days a year and, they're just living a normal life like most of us, right? Like there's probably not much benefit of laying in a bunch of accumulation blocks inside of their calendar. Instead, just start that long-term plan, right? And then in your long-term plan, like notes, goals, priorities, just really lay that stuff out. Like, this is what my intentions are over the year. And then you just go cycle by cycle. But then you have those like notes, goals, and priorities that you're looking at when you had originally built that long-term plan. And you have to just keep staying true to those things, right? And those things will change with most people. Well, those things will change with probably every person that you coach, right? Over a year. A year is a really long time, especially for someone that's not getting ready for something. So I wouldn't even waste the time, right? And just lay out a bunch of accumulation phases with dates and stuff like that. I would take that cycle by cycle, but you still go through that long-term planning process by laying out what the intentions of the program are over those 12 months.
So for like over that 12-month period for your general population client who's, again, trading to look good and feel good, are you focused on some kind of linear periodization model where you are accumulating volume and intensity throughout that year? And then are you like, starting again in the next year, or does trading look consistent? Like, that's something I try and wrap my head around. How do we restart this thing in January?
Yeah, I think we have to look at where our clients are in their training age, right? Because we could be trying to work on the same characteristic for 2 years, right? And we're just like working on that characteristic in a different way. Like I can think of a couple of clients that I have right now where we're still trying to like really master motor control. And that will be a constant in these people's programs for probably a while. But the way that we do that and the way that we prescribe those things can change, right? It's like it doesn't always have to be the same exercise with the same tempo, with the same reps and the same sets. We can manipulate those things. So essentially, you could have long-term plan 1, 2020, and the notes, priorities, goals, blah, blah, blah. All that stuff can stay exactly the same in long-term plan 2, 2021, right? And the work that you do in long-term plan 2021 is going to it should look different than the work that you did last year, even though you're trying to go after the same characteristic of gaining better motor control, right? So you look back at 2021, for instance, and the exercise selection should be more advanced in 2021, right? If it's not more advanced, you've not done anything for that person, right? If this person couldn't organize putting a kettlebell in the front rack and squatting 15 times at tempo, if they couldn't do that last year, they should be able to do it next year, if that makes sense, or this year. So the things inside of the program will likely change. And those things for most coaches will change because the clients and their brains need it to change, or else they'll feel like they're not getting better. So just like we have conversations with, athletes on like, KPIs and we want to get this thing better and we're high-fiving when we PR, we're high-fiving when we have a better 5K row or we do more muscle ups. We can have those same types of conversations around moving really well, right? Like imagine the KPI being the dumbbell bench press for 10 reps. at 40 pounds with perfect technique. Imagine if that was like the goal for the year. It's like, I want you to be able to do that with perfect technique, come down and feel really good about it. And, you know, the way that you organize your left arm versus your right arm looked exactly the same. It felt really smooth. You felt strong and you felt contractions like you never felt before, right? Like we could start getting people excited about that stuff, right? So more like that stuff and being consistent and just continually challenging them on what their goals are, and maybe injecting as a coach, like maybe you should try to do this, right? Like maybe you're aiming too low. Maybe we should aim a little bit higher than that. So I think it's always that back and forth between a coach and client of trying to organize why we're doing what we're doing. But it doesn't always have, like, you know, it doesn't always have to be like, we need to make this thing better.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you finished with that last comment there, because it is so easy to fall into the trap of thinking that it is that you always have to strive for some end goal or make something specifically better. So I think losing that, you know, idea and just focusing on, like you said, that 10 rep dumbbell bench press, which you made me feel excited about in that comment there, I think is a really important reminder to coaches.
Yeah, it's funny.
You,
I had a conversation with one of my clients a couple of weeks ago, and she had asked me something like, she had asked me, you know, would it be helpful in me accomplishing like the goals inside of the program if you were more specific and you told me exactly, you know, what my split time should be, what my goals are for each piece and all of that. And it was a good question. And I thought about it before I responded to it. And I was just like, no, I don't think that would be more helpful because, we've been together for quite some time. And, if you don't understand like the intention, the goal, what's good, what's not good, and an aerobic piece, it's like, we need to take a step back and have a conversation on what that should look like, what that should feel like, what success is inside of that. And this person is not a competitor either. Right. So I was like, quite frankly, I don't really give a shit what your absolute scores are. I was like, I just want you to be able to see this work, go into the gym and do it at a sustainable pace without thinking twice about it. I don't care if your splits are 115 versus 145. If you're 145, 145, 145, 145, you're done and you feel really good and you got a really good session in, that's an absolute win. So don't look at your training program and see, 155, 155, 155 and think that's a loss because you were moving too slow. It's like, okay, I didn't do a good enough job of explaining why we do this type of work. It's not to improve absolute scores. It's to improve your ability to be sustainable in that specific piece. And she was like, oh, okay, I think I get it now. So I just had to like say that a different way. But like we just ended with, it doesn't really matter what your scores are. It doesn't really matter how much weight you lift. What really matters is quality. Like that's what really matters. Unless you're a competitor, of course, numbers and KPIs and all that stuff matter. But if you're just doing this thing to do it, it's like, that shit doesn't really matter. We all love to challenge ourselves every now and again and see what we're capable of, for sure. Right. Like I fall into that camp as well, but very rarely do I hit a training session and I think like, or I feel bad for myself because I didn't squat as much as I wanted to squat for 4 sets of 10. Right. It's like, I don't really care. I just want the feeling.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a cool reminder for coaches as well, that are like having these conversations this month with their clients and setting them up with their long-term plans for 2021. Like, what do you want your client to learn this year? What can they learn about exercise and exercise intention, so that at the end of the year, they understand what MAP 9 pace is and you don't have to have that conversation with them, or they understand the kind of weight that they should be lifting for themselves for 8 to 10 reps at a 3-1-3-1 tempo versus 5 to 6 reps at a 2-0x or tempo, and just having that knowledge and that fitness IQ and making that part of the process and the goals for that long-term plan.
Yeah, I think something that I biasly put in all my clients' goals, like on my end, and I don't actually type this, but it's always in my head. And we always use words like alignment and fulfillment and all that stuff. But something that's always in my head is like, I just want this person to fall in love with fitness or continue to love fitness, right? So I don't want to give this person anything that makes them fall out of love with fitness. And you hear the story so many times of people trying a different type of fitness or going to this or going to that. And they're just like, yeah, I just stopped because it wasn't fun. Right. And, I don't want to like poo poo on people that, need to have fun in the gym, because I want to have fun in the gym too. Right. It's like, we just talked about it at the beginning of this conversation. I have a garage gym, right? And it's like over the past month and a half, I haven't really used that garage gym because we just opened our new facility at OPEX. It's like, it's more fun to me to train with other people in the room, right? So I like leave my house, drive, go to OPEX, come back, even though I have a garage gym, right? So I'd be crazy to say that fun doesn't matter. Fun does matter. I love to train around people and to be social in that arena, right? So I think we have to be really intentional on not giving our clients things that will make them hate fitness or despise it. So we should want to give everyone that feeling in the morning of like, I'm really excited to do fitness today.
I want to stop and like reflect on that for a little bit, Carl, because a thought I have fairly often is I'm incredibly grateful that I love exercising. I like eating healthy foods. I like living this like BLG's aligned lifestyle. Like I just do these things. They're incredibly natural to me. Yes, sometimes I don't feel like going to the gym as much as other days, but I'm always going to do it. Like it's, as James would say, like brushing my teeth. And that is something I strive for my clients to be able to achieve, in their own ways, because as we know, everyone's ideal version of fitness looks a little bit different. And when I think about it, it's not that, fitness is not inherently fun. Eating broccoli is not inherently fun. Going to bed at 9 p.m. is not inherently fun. But when those things become routine and become behaviors and you like the outcome of that behavior, i.e. I feel, I look, I do these certain things because of my behaviors, it's fun, right? And how do coaches, I guess, communicate that to their clients and set up their clients so that exercise just becomes a part of what they do? And I know that's like a really big, broad question, but it's something I think we need to constantly reckon with and constantly think about.
Yeah, I think coaches just have to believe it themselves, right? When someone hires, you listening as a fitness coach, they do it because in some way they probably look up to you, right? Or they want to be like you, right? Whether that's the way you look, the way you act, the way that you feel, the way that you move, how strong you are, whatever it is, right? Like they're hiring you to turn them into a version of you most of the time, right? That's why you don't see a lot of like obese personal trainers, right? They probably wouldn't get that much business. So on that note, it's like you have to believe those things to push those beliefs and those ideas down to your clients, right? So imagine bringing on a client that is not aligned with anything that we just said. They're like, fitness is terrible. I hate it, but I want the outcomes. I want to be leaner. I want to be stronger. I want to do this thing. If we're just to constantly feed into that thing and we're just like, okay, I'm going to give you this thing because it's going to make you leaner. It's going to make you stronger. But like, what are we telling them? We're telling them a story that you need to do fitness to be leaner, stronger, faster, blah, blah, blah. But imagine if they're like, hey, my goal is to lose, this percentage of body fat. I need to do this. I need to do that. And you, instead of saying, I'm going to give you all these things to make you lose 10%, 5% of body fat, I'm going to give you these things because you're going to create consistency. You're going to fall in love with this fitness thing. You're going to want to do it forever. And you're going to lose 5% plus percentage body fat. And you're going to continue to lose body fat just because now this is going to be your lifestyle because you love this thing. So those are two completely different ways of looking at it. And I'm not stupid, right? I know like you don't say those things to a client day one and they're like, yep, I believe you, but it's consistency. That message has to be consistent, right? You have to get them results, of course, right? But that message has to be consistent. So maybe they don't believe that day one, but they're working with you for 6 months and you have you're having that 6 monthly consultation and you're sitting down and a light bulb just goes off, right? They're like, man, I remember I was really skeptical on day 60 because we had only lost 0.5% body fat. And I was like, am I doing what I should be doing? And you kept talking about this sustainable thing. And I need to just do this thing for an amount of time to see long lasting results. And now we're at month 6 and I'm all of a sudden like out of nowhere down 4% body fat. And I haven't even noticed it. And I actually love doing this. I can't imagine my days without it anymore. And that light bulb goes off and they're just like, yeah, I love fitness, right? So those are two different aspects, right? But you have to get your clients some sort of results for them to realize that. Because if you get to that 6-month mark and they're like, I still don't love this thing, I've been doing it every day and I'm up 5% body fat, you're going to get fired, right? They're going to fire you as their coach. So I think it's that's where the art of coaching really comes into play. Like, how do you get each individual person bought in, and being okay with you not getting every single person bought in? Like, not every person is a great fit for you as a fitness coach. You're going to lose clients. And in the same token, you're going to gain clients, and clients are going to want to be with you forever, right? Look at that retention percentage. And if you see that thing dipping at like 80%, it's like, you're doing something wrong, dude. Like, stop and look at yourself and what you're doing. But if you have good retention, 90% plus, and your clients are getting results and you're happy and fulfilled and all of that, you're probably doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, I think it takes confidence, right, on the part of the coach.
Sorry, Georgia, let me stop this sun from coming into my face really quick.
Of course, don't get blasted in the eyes by the sun.
Okay, that should be better.
Better? Not going to go blind? So all I was going to say is, like, it takes confidence on the part of the coach and a defined set of like values and beliefs around fitness to be able to stay true to that message and keep saying the same thing to that client, even if they're only seeing, you know, a 0.5% body fat drop at 60 days into doing the program design. Like, I know mistakes I've made in the past. I've changed course and changed message and tried something different because I was like, oh, this person isn't seeing results that they thought they were going to see as fast as they wanted to see them. I'm doing something wrong. It's on me. But as you started that comment off by saying, like, that client came to you because they respect you in some way. They want to be like you. There's something about you that they want for themselves. Remembering that and having confidence in the values and beliefs you have around fitness, if you have them, you've got to have those first, right? Is something important to remember.
Yep, definitely.
What are your beliefs and values around fitness, Carl?
Oh man. Yeah. If I say that, people are just gonna be like, this dude is just repping OPEX, but it's everything we believe at OPEX. Those are my beliefs and values around fitness, right? It's, you know, I think the fitness coach is someone that needs to be more important in society, right? Like, the fitness coach needs to be a more well-respected figure. And you know, there are plenty of fitness coaches that are massively respected in their communities. Like, I just look at, you know, our OPEX gyms ecosystem and look at, like, you know, some names that come to mind. And I'm just like, yeah, they're the guy or they're the girl in their local communities, and they're seen as that. But I want that to be everywhere, right? Like, I think fitness coaches need to be more well respected. And then on the, you know, society side or general population side, I just think people need to be more aware of, you know, the truths in fitness and how easy this thing really is. Like, health and fitness is not complicated. Health and fitness is not complex. And, you know, we're an education company that teaches coaches how to design training programs and to talk to clients and, you know, prescribe nutrition and behavior and all of that. And, you know, I think a lot of people, when they get into our program, they're just like, it was just really good to hear it that way. And it was really good to hear it in a way that I can connect this whole thing in a whole approach. Right. But I think most people leave and they're like, that's not that complex. It's a lot of work to be a fitness coach, but it's not that complex as long as you have a really good framework and really good principles. So just to answer your question really quick, it's the fitness coach being a more well-respected figure in society, and general population people, like we say, doing their ideal version of fitness based on what's right for them, not what's based on what's right for the person next to them or the person in that gym or this gym or on Instagram. So I think those are my main beliefs in fitness and what we need to do to keep pushing this thing forward.
Yeah, I obviously agree with them and support them. And I want everyone to realize how much physical fitness and like being in their physical body can help them be more effective in other areas of their life and in their emotional and their spiritual growth. And yeah, it's just such a powerful medium, as James would say.
Yeah, I did a podcast yesterday with one of my old friends. I went to middle school and high school with this guy, and he he went to, I forgot which college he went to. He went to a historically Black college, and played a really big part in pushing a lot of really good programs forward and what they're doing down there in Atlanta. And I talked to this guy, and he was asking me some similar questions on, like, what are my beliefs in fitness, and what, because he had this like thought of me, right? Because he just kind of like sees stuff on social media, and he knew me back in the football days, and this like competitive guy and performance focused and all of that. And he's just like, he had this like thought of like I was this high performer that was like competing in like CrossFit, and I was going to the CrossFit games, and I was just like that guy, and like coaching a bunch of people. And he thought I just like owned a bunch of gyms that coached performers. And I kind of broke down like what we did and what my beliefs were. And he's just like, I've never heard fitness broken down in that way. And I was just like, kind of like brought back a little bit. And this was a good N=1 of a person that's not in this like fitness world. He like works out and stuff, but he's like goes to a commercial gym. He's not really into this thing. And he told me, he's like, I've never heard fitness described that way. And I was kind of like blown away. I was like, really? I was like, but isn't that a simple way of talking about health and fitness? He's like, yeah, it's really simple. He's like, where do I sign up? And I'm like, well, we don't really do that. But it was just funny to hear that from an outsider of like, how he was kind of looking at me as if I was an alien, right? In the way that I was talking about fitness. And we talk about that stuff all the time. And we're just like, it's simple, right? It's simple. Like, this is how you become healthy. This is how you stay healthy. This is how you live longer. This is how you do these things. And he was just thinking more like performance and muscle ups and, keto diets and, pushing everything to the extreme. And I was just like, dude, just find balance in everything that you do and you'll be okay.
Yeah, I get the same thing from outsiders looking in. So we gotta clear that message up, Carl, and
I know,
what
right?
we're putting out.
I know.
Okay, last question, because again, it's January and we talked about habits and pieces like that. But what are your fitness goals for 2021?
Oh man, keep on keeping on. Literally, yeah, that's it. I mean, I don't really, like I'm not outcome based anymore, right? Like I don't have like body composition goals. I don't have performance goals. I don't have any of that stuff. It's more, I just want to keep waking up with that feeling. That's it. That's all I want to do. So whatever I have to do in my fitness and wherever I have to pivot, I just want to keep that feeling. And if I start to realize that I'm losing it, I need to take a step back and ask myself, why am I losing that? So I know that's kind of a boring answer, but it's not outcome based. It's to keep that feeling.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. And I think we need to get you a OPEX Keep On Keeping On t-shirt.
What about you, Georgia? What are your fitness goals this year?
Mine's a little more specific. Obviously, to keep coaching myself and enjoy that process, but I do want to compete in jiu-jitsu towards the end of the year as health stays in order. So fingers crossed that goes to plan and I actually can, because right now there's not a ton of tournaments being hosted because it's pretty hard to socially distance jiu-jitsu, as you may imagine. But I'm
trying to imagine, like, how can you do that? Like maybe like VR jiu-jitsu or something like that. Maybe that'll be a thing.
That sounds dangerous. I think I would like slam my head on the ground trying that. I don't know. There are some schools that like sell face masks and things like that, which like, power to them, but there's no way that thing is staying on if you actually roll. Like I've seen people try and it does not work.
Yeah, I could imagine. Cool.
All right.
So just crushing BJJ in 2021. So I guess one of my goals is to get on the mat with Georgia this year.
That is going to happen. And the boys too. We're going to do some kids jiu-jitsu.
Yes. I want the boys getting back into that. Colton was really big into BJJ for about a year and a half when we lived in South Carolina, because at one of our gyms, we had a BJJ program. So yeah, we need to get those boys back in. You'll be the perfect teacher for them.
Definitely after this 14-day quarantine period is up.
Yeah, stay away from us. We are contaminated.
All right, guys. Well, it was nice to chat today, Carl. And if you are watching, please make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit that like button. And then if you're listening on audio, please leave us a review and let us know your thoughts. Carl, anything else you'd like to leave the audience with?
No, just keep on keeping on.